Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. So today I am finally doing that Iranian movie recommendations video that I mentioned, I think in the Invisible Cities announcement for April. I mentioned that I wanted to do this and I heard from some of you that you were interested in it, so that is what we're going to be doing today. If you don't know this about me already, I'm half Iranian, and one of the things that I've been trying to do in the last few years is to read more books by Iranian authors and to explore more of Iranian cinema, to sort of reconnect with my cultural heritage. And it's something that I've been sort of actively working on in the last few years. So this month with Invisible Cities, I'm really excited to dedicate the month for that. That being said, I have watched quite a few Iranian movies in the last maybe 1 or 2 years. Since the pandemic, I've watched pretty much all of these. So the first movie I wanted to recommend is one that I've only watched once, but I have a suspicion that this could be one of my all-time favorite movies, like in my top 20, probably my top 10, with a rewatch. So this will probably be one I will get to this month. It is A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. It came out in 2014 and was directed by Anna Lily Amirpour. This is a Iranian vampire movie, which is just the concept of this movie is so fun and unexpected. It's basically a black and white movie about a young woman who is a vampire and she preys on men. And everything about the way this movie is told, to the cinematography and the shooting of it and directing of it, the scenes where the characters are dancing and the interactions, was just spot on. I absolutely loved everything about visually about this movie, as well as I said, the narrative of it, and the play with certain aspects to the vampire story particularly, which was just really smartly done, I think. Next we have a short film. It is called Motherly. It came out in 2013 by Navid Nika Azad. This is a short film about a blind woman whose adult son has, I think, recently engaged to be married with a young woman, and the blind mother decides to sort of scout out the woman. So she sets up a situation where she basically gets to meet the young woman in a park, and the young woman doesn't know that this woman is her partner's mother. So most of the film is the mother and the fiance sitting down on a park bench and talking, and the interaction between them is just so warm, and there's something about also the interactions with strangers is a very relatable quality, like Iranians being able to talk to complete strangers very easily, just based on the fact that they're both Iranians. That is something I definitely recognize with my dad. So the interactions with the strangers and the relationship that the mother has with her son, and there was just something very warm and tender about this movie. Next is another movie that I think might be slightly difficult to get hold of, but it is fantastic. So if you have any chance of seeing it, I highly recommend it. It is called Radiograph of a Family. It came out in 2020 and was directed by Firouzeh Khosrovani. I watched this through the Gothenburg Film Festival last year, and it was one of my favorites, and again one of those movies that I think if I rewatch it, it will end up being among my top 10 of all time. It's just so spot on in the things that I enjoy. So this movie is a documentary about the director's family, particularly her parents, and it follows her parents in their youth and them moving from Iran to Paris for a while in their 20s, I think, and then they moved back eventually to Iran. And so the movie itself is in part it is just a family story and following the parents' journey in moving to another country as immigrants and the trying to adjust to a different country and culture, sort of the culture clashes as well that came with living in France and living in a Western country. But also a lot of the movie is about the revolution, and not in a political way necessarily. It is sort of talking about the politics as well, because the mother in particular, I think, ends up being quite engaged in the political movement when they move back to Iran, and that is part of the reason that the parents sort of differ in their reactions to the revolution. And that is something that is explored in the movie, and the way that citizens reacted to the revolution before it and after it, and how it divided people, how their relationship to their country changed. So I think a lot of the reasons I love this one was just very personal, how I reacted to it, how it fit into my understanding of the country and the revolution itself. Also the director sort of almost doing detective work and into her heritage as well. Then we have a director that I really enjoy, and a very popular director as well, but I discovered him last year. He's called Abbas Kiarostami, and I watched 3 of his movies last year because they were all suddenly available on Mubi. And I hadn't been able to get hold of them in a few years before that. So I was really excited about that. So I watched Through the Olive Trees that came out in 1994. Where is My Friend's House that came out in 1987. And my favorite of the 3, Taste of Cherry, that came out in 1997. And Taste of Cherry is about a man who is contemplating or he's planning his suicide. And that sounds like a very depressing movie, and in certain respects it is. I wouldn't say depressing, but it is melancholic and meditative. But a lot of this movie is very quiet and not necessarily somber either, but the tone of it is just very quiet and contemplative and reflective. And the man in question is driving around and basically trying to find someone that is willing to help him in his plan. And there is again that aspect of strangers communicating, and often very unguardedly and compassionately, that I really loved. And I love the directing style of Abbas Kiarostami's movies, and this one is particularly beautiful in my opinion. Another documentary that I have actually very recently watched is called 50 Howls from Happiness. It came out in 2013 and was directed by Mitra Farahani. This is a documentary about an artist called Bahman Mohassez, and he has supposedly been called the Persian or Iranian Picasso. But he does really interesting art, and I saw this documentary was available through my library, and this is more of a classic documentary in comparison to Radiograph of a Family. This is more like the director interviewing him and having chats with him, fairly scaled off. Like it's them just sitting down in his living room and talking, and she shows some of his paintings, and sometimes you hear him talking like a voiceover over the paintings or other clips. The conversations themselves I found really interesting. I found the artist himself very interesting, and for me, the way he, even though I disagreed with some of the things that he said, and I had issues with certain opinions that he mentioned in the documentary, I think generally speaking, I found it enlightening to hear his perspective on the country, particularly as someone who had moved away from it. The next one I want to talk about is another one that I have watched very recently, like a week ago. It is called African Violet. Came out in 2019 and was directed by Mona Zandi Hagigi. This is again a very quiet, warm, contemplative type of movie. It has quite low ratings on Letterboxd, but I really enjoyed it. So this is about a woman who is currently living with her new husband, or it's not new, they have been together for several years, but she has just decided to bring home her ex-husband from their nursery home that their adult children has put him in. So basically the ex-husband has been very poorly recently, and the adult children can't take care of him anymore, so they have decided to put him in a nursery home, and their mother can't stand the fact that he has been put in this home without anyone who really cares for him, sort of looking out for him. So basically she brings him home, and she lives with her ex-husband and her husband in the same household, and most of the movie is about the interactions in this trio, which is quite tense a lot of the time. I just found it to be very beautiful, the way it's done, the way the interactions are done. The acting of it feels very authentic, and there's humor in it, there's warmth in it. A lot of it is sort of touching on the fact that, or the right of a person to have a dignified end, to the responsibility of family members in taking care of another family member who is ill, the boundaries of what you can expect of another person in this situation. So as I said, it's a very tense situation, but it's also filled with warmth because all of the characters actually want to do right by the other. The last one I have is currently my favorite movie of the year, I think. And it was another one of those I watched through the Gothenburg Film Festival this year. It is called Hit the Road, and it came out last year and was directed by Panahi, who is the son of Jafar Panahi. This is his debut film. This was just so good. So it is about a family whose adult son has to leave the country due to certain circumstances. He basically has to leave, and it isn't voluntary. The reasons behind his leave, I don't think they really go into it, unless I missed that detail. But for some reason or another, he has to leave because of something he has done that the government doesn't like, or something like that. In something along those lines. And so the family has decided to do a road trip of driving him to the border where he will eventually get out of the country. And so the father, the mother, the adult son who is leaving, and the younger son goes on a family road trip, and the younger son doesn't know what will happen or why they're going on this road trip. He has been kept in the dark, and they are trying to keep that situation. They're trying to keep him in the dark, and so they don't share the sorrowful reasons for the trip, and because of that ends up being the undertone of the movie. and they are trying to be cheerful, and there's a lot of comedy in this movie, which I don't think you can tell from the trailer. The trailer shows the sadness of the movie, and there is definitely that because of the separation that is about to happen, and the fear and the worries that the parents feel with the separation and with getting to that point of him actually being safe. But most of the movie is just filled with so much fun and joy and warmth in how much all of these characters care about each other. But there's just so much comedy in it, as I said, that don't really show in the trailer that I watched, that made me love it. I am eagerly anticipating this director's next movie. I have a suspicion I will be enjoying a lot of the stuff that he brings out in the future. I also really like the cast in this. Those are the Iranian movies I wanted to recommend today. I will link the Invisible Cities information in the description, as well as the links to all of these movies' Letterboxd pages, so you can find more information about them and possibly where you can find them in your country where you can watch them. I will probably be watching some new Iranian movies this month, and maybe we'll do a part 2 of this at the end of the month or sometime in the future. That was all I wanted to say. I hope you're doing well and you're taking care of yourselves, and I will talk to you soon.